Hello, our friend.
Good morning. How are you?
We are well. How are you?
I am very well also. Thank you for asking.
We don't have mornings.
I know you don't. We do.
It's interesting.
Do you come in the love and the light of the one infinite creator?
Yes, we do. As do you.
As do I. Yes, thank you for asking.
Very good. No, you asked us.
Will you ask second?
It's been a few of your days,
Mm-hmm.
but we're back. Well, we've always been here, but we're back in this
To communicate.
capacity. This
Yes.
is correct. Okay, we have a few things we would like to discuss with you.
Please.
Okay. First of all, your checky ballot things,
Mm-hmm.
the
The
red
voting.
and the blue, the voting. Yes. As we spoke about prior to, this is another opportunity for people to choose service to self or service to others.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole initial design on a, how do we say, a spiritual level for people to make a determination one way or the other. And that's sort of a facilitator. And it also, in these elections, as you call them,
Yes.
within families and close friends, it causes a great amount of dialogue
Mm-hmm.
and also a great amount of friction,
Mm-hmm.
which pushes people to resolve their issues or magnify their issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting phenomenon, but very effective and quick for them to make a decision one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And it also is incumbent upon each individual to respect the other person's posture,
Mm-hmm.
stance within divisive times that your country is experiencing. And it's not just your country, the United States,
Uh-huh.
it's also a global phenomenon.
Right.
And so that is the purpose of these elections. And the people that are running for office, as you call them,
Yes.
they are providing a tremendous service, whether the populace agrees with them or not. They are participating in this choice
Mm-hmm.
that the population has to make
Mm-hmm.
and decide one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is the design of your election process. We see flags,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just within this country, but if you look in South America, that country that starts with a B, Brazil,
Yes.
Venezuela, we've spoken about that country numerous times.
Yes.
It will come up more and more in your TV, the box with the pictures.
Right.
It will come up more and more as the populace becomes more aware.
Mm-hmm.
So, from our perspective, we don't predict the future, but your present election, many of your people were anticipating a great significant amount of violence,
Yes.
anger,
Right.
fear, rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
But the awareness has escalated to the point where many individuals that would have participated in such activities have recognized this to be not beneficial and harmful. So we picture a car where you put the to make it stop,
Mm-hmm.
put a brake on it.
Right.
So many people have that awareness to halt that.
Good.
And that's good. That
is
is a
good,
good
yes.
thing. That is a good thing. And so we were pleased to see that, because the initial trajectory that we saw was it going down a different road. We picture different paths, roads, as we spoke about before.
Right.
And we pictured it going down a different trajectory that would have been very harmful.
Good.
But thank goodness that the populace awareness has risen above a certain threshold
Mm-hmm.
to where this was not allowed.
And this is a recent transformation.
Yes, recent. And that was all due to your populace and them elevating their awareness.
Okay.
But they didn't necessarily realize that they were elevating their awareness. They just looked around and realized that that was not the best way to go.
Okay.
So that is a good thing. That is a good reflection upon your populace. The rest of the world will hopefully follow suit, that there will be less, how do we say, stampedes of people running through the streets.
Mob rule.
Mob rule, throwing rocks.
Right.
But once those people become more aware, they have the awareness, they just have to recognize it. And it's incumbent upon each one of them to recognize that awareness.
Right.
And the more jobs and stability, we picture like a flat line, not like somebody dying, but like a flat line, like a stability,
Right.
then the more likely other countries and individuals will recognize that and model that behavior in order to elevate their own societies and their own population. And there will be more congruency between countries to interact and exchange goods. We picture a truck on a road with products and trade, and there will be more balance and understanding between different societies and cultures that don't recognize one another or don't understand one another, which creates fear. So once that diminishes, the more peaceful the populace will become. Now, that's going to take some time. In your perspective, we picture a clock. That will just take some time.
Right.
But from our perspective, at this particular junction, and as we said before, it could change either way at any time, but that seems to be the trajectory that it's taking. And your country will be the model for other countries to recognize that we picture a pot, a melting pot.
Yes.
With different cultures, societies. Blending, getting together, making like a big stew.
Right.
Which is tasty, which is good, which is nice. Everybody contributes something. And so the more that this country that you live in can emulate that, then other countries and places like particularly Eastern Europe, where there's lots of conflict,
right,
they can recognize one another as people, individuals, all rather the same. And so that will hopefully translate across that ocean, that big body of water, over to other parts. And so hopefully that will transmit. And it's an energetic and spiritual kind of wave. It's an energy that your populace puts out. The more that they can demonstrate tolerance, love, and caring for one another, which is escalating.
Okay.
Because the previous trajectory that we saw had it going the other way. But that seems to have shifted. And that's demonstrated, as we just said, in your voting, checking the boxes.
Right.
The machine thing. And there will be those that say that those are inaccurate and that they lie. But the majority of the populace will see through that.
Okay.
Because the awareness has elevated.
It's encouraging.
Yes.
Well, if I may ask a few questions to clarify, when you were using the illustration of a flat line and emphasized that it was not death, you're not suggesting stagnation. You're simply illustrating stability.
Yes, very stable. Almost like a teeter-totter, where you have a one person on one end and one on the other, and you try to balance it so that one end doesn't sink and fall, and neither does the other. But you balance each other, and the way you do that is by exchanging energy. It's a give and take situation. Okay. It's not all about the individual. Now we want to talk about something else.
Okay.
We see a gear, shifting gears. Shifting gears, is that your terminology?
Yeah.
Your food supply.
I'm sorry?
Your food supply?
Yes.
It is very much dominated by service to self.
Yes.
Lots of contamination.
Okay.
The
intentional contamination?
Yes, intentional. Very intentional. That the men in the white suits that spray the vegetables growing.
Right, insecticides.
In the rows. Yes. Right. Yes, that is intentional. That is intentional to make the populace sick. And when people are sick, they don't function at their highest capacity. And many people think that eating those vegetables. And the trees in the southern state with the oranges,
Yes, Florida.
they're sprayed as well. Everything is being sprayed.
Right.
And the farmers don't they partially recognize the detriment, which is why they wear those white suits with the hat.
Mm-hmm. Protective coverings.
Yes. And we find it interesting that your populace does not recognize that as being a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That they have to wear these suits and then they spray your food, your tomatoes in that western state, the big
California.
state, that state. The oranges in the Florida state you had just previously referenced. Lemons, limes, oranges.
Citrus fruits.
Yes, the citrus fruits. And the tomatoes that are grown in the center part of California.
Mm-hmm.
They grow lots of vegetables there.
Right.
The workers are put at harm for having to spray
Mm-hmm.
with so the bugs don't eat the fruit.
Right. And the service self-controls this by controlling the major corporations that manufacture the chemicals.
The people that run these corporations have no consideration for the people that work the fields.
Mm-hmm.
And so these people are exposed to multiple hazardous chemicals by actively spraying them because they inhale them, and they're not given appropriate protective gear.
Right.
But because they are so desperate for work, and they come from another place there's a border, and they come up from that place for work, so they take the chance of potentially becoming ill, or they don't even recognize the illnesses that they may contract until it's further down the road.
Yeah, they're trusting, erroneously trusting.
Well, but they are desperate for work and money to send back to their families.
Right.
So they don't understand the dangers that they are putting themselves in.
Mm-hmm.
And once they ingest those chemicals and then go back to their families, they could potentially harm their families because those toxins are within their bodies. And so when the wife and husband decide to copulate, he or she could infect the other without knowing.
And that would pass through to the children as well, would it not?
Absolutely. If the mother is carrying a baby in the womb that has not been born yet, it will directly go into the baby, which limits their lifespan, which affects their immune system. And so they are more prone to disease, to mental delay, and behavioral problems as well.
Okay.
So this is something that has not, how shall we say, it has been addressed by your, we see a beaker, a man in a lab coat. Scientists. It has been identified, but it has not been rectified.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's not, it's encouraging news to have that made apparent. It's not good news that that's continuing to go on. But all these things that you're talking about, just to review, our objective for having this conversation is to attempt to assist the population of Earth in their evolutionary development, in their spiritual advancement, by providing them with information.
Yes.
And providing them with the opportunity to, with information, make prudent or good choices to advance themselves along the evolutionary path.
Yes. And this is why we wanted to bring up nutrition, because that is a huge part of advancing yourself. If you do not maintain a healthy body, a healthy pH within your body, then that just further delays the evolutionary process. So all of these products that come in plastic bags,
right,
and
prepared foods,
things that are not
fresh
or natural, tend to delay that.
Okay. But continuing along the lines of providing truthful information about the nature of our experience on Earth. And in the course of our discussions, it becomes apparent to me that one of the major or the major obstacle to our historical advancement, and going way back before the Earth experience, all the way back to Zeno or Venus times, the principal hindrance to the populace's advancement has been the interference of service to self. Would you agree with that?
Yes, as we've just demonstrated through your food source, service to self has influenced virtually every aspect of life as most people know it.
Mm-hmm.
Service to self is there because service to self feeds off of suffering, fear, anxiety. And so when people are fearful that they won't have enough to eat or they won't have enough green paper dollars
Mm-hmm.
To pay the bills and things of that nature, they feed off of that,
Mm-hmm.
which is why the what do we call them? The top executives of big corporations that
Right.
that have the big bins with the black oil.
Mm-hmm.
Oil.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, they are all service to self.
Yeah.
Your gas price for when you put in the car.
Right. The fuel for the cars.
Yes, the fuel for the cars. They're all kind of in cahoots. We'll
Yes.
use her word,
Yeah.
cahoots,
It's a good word.
with one another to elevate those prices when there's no need for it.
Mm-hmm.
There is plenty to go around.
Right.
And there is plenty of everything to go around. Food, oil, gas, money, which we find to be a very erroneous trade staple.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
As we have stated before, if you look at what your society would consider primitive cultures,
Mm-hmm.
they have no monetary system. They just give to one another.
Right.
You're hungry, I have this fruit.
Mm-hmm.
I need shelter, you help me build a little house.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the design. It wasn't meant to be a hoarding
Right.
society, a hoarding system,
Right.
which is what your country and many other places that you would consider developing countries or developed countries to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more of a hoarding system where this is mine, not yours, and I'm not going to share.
Right.
And
Possessiveness.
yes, and that just lowers the consciousness of the individual controlling those resources because they become more internally driven
Mm-hmm.
and they turn inward and they lose compassion for those around them.
Right.
Not all, but many.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, continuing along this line, in the Earth experience, the third density Earth experience, what do you see as the major areas that service to self uses to influence and repress the population? We've talked about some of this, obviously trying to control food and resources, but are there other areas that, from a broad standpoint, that you see as major contributors to their continued domination and subjugation of the population?
Yes. For those that are unaware, their thoughts are easily manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
And so service to self can recognize that from an external point.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can easily put thoughts into individuals' heads, especially when they sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
Or if a scary situation arises, somebody might have gotten hurt, might have been in an accident, or just anything that generates fear, like a loss of a job, loss of the money.
Mm-hmm. Money.
Any situation like that, a loss of a piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature lowers their capacity to, we don't want to say fight that off, but it delineates their awareness and energy
Mm-hmm.
into something that is really not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And so service to self tends to capitalize upon that
Right.
and feed more and more into that fear, that worry.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that happens, more and more energy is released from the individual to feed them.
And this energy is released from the individual because of their chaos. In other words, I envision it as kind of like we require a certain amount of energy in order to maintain balance, kind of like, as science fiction calls it, a force field. And when we lose that energy, then we don't have enough energy to maintain the control over our parts, our functioning.
Yes. The more energy that is released from an individual, the less energy they have to
Function.
On a spiritual level defend themselves.
Okay.
To recognize what is going on around them.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of your populace does not know the differentiation between the two
Mm-hmm.
because they lack the awareness
Right.
or the understanding or the wherewithal to take time
Mm-hmm.
to be quiet and sit
Right.
and feel.
Mm-hmm.
And once an individual is able to do that, then they have the awareness to recognize certain events, circumstances, things that occur that are outside themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they have the awareness to say, and put a stop to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that requires being still, being quiet, looking inside, and just saying no
Mm-hmm.
to all these pressures and things that other people put upon them,
Mm-hmm.
expectations. And so the ability to just say no to a lot of that allows an individual time to have that introspection and not take on the burdens and personalities and problems that other people want to project on them.
Mm-hmm. Is my perspective, and correct me where I'm in error here, awareness requires a certain amount of energy resources in order to be employed, to be used. It requires a certain amount of energy fuel, and when the fuel is diverted to other uses rather than fueling awareness is when we remain in chaos. Is that accurate?
Yes, we wouldn't use the word chaos. We would just say a lack of awareness and just kind of being like a robot,
Mm-hmm.
just going through, I do this at this time, this at that time, go to work, go here, go there, come home, eat, go to sleep, and then repeat the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no time to develop that awareness because the individual, for the most part, is fearful of that awareness because that requires a lot of looking inside and trying to determine what is going on, what is real, what isn't real,
Mm-hmm.
what is valid, what is invalid. And most of your populace is unwilling, unable, or fearful, or just does not have the awareness to do such a thing.
Yeah, they're unaware of the necessity of doing that,
Yes.
or even that as it being an option.
Yes, because they're caught up in that we picture that mouse on a wheel. We've used this reference before.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just running and running and running, and then you get so used to a certain daily routine that everything else that should be addressed or looked at or felt
Mm-hmm.
just falls by the wayside.
Right.
And so the majority of the populace is caught up in that. And as we mentioned before, your elections are kind of like shaking somebody, saying, okay, here's your chance to do something. So you've got to evaluate what you think is important, and then you can make a choice. So again, your elections are a service to polarize one way or the other, but it causes the individual, every time they turn on that box with the picture, the TV, to they're forced to think about it
Right.
and make a decision, and then it causes more dialogue within friends, family, and things of that nature. So again, this is another example. So we had mentioned your holidays as another way for people to interact.
Right.
Because in your society, people do not interact much anymore because they're so distracted by all these devices, as we have said before.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know how much time we have left. We may need to defer this to another time, but specific areas that the service to self has essentially created within our population to perpetuate and emphasize their domination and subjugation of the population. Do you have any that come to mind that you think we need to examine?
Well, the monetary system, for one.
Right.
That's
Okay.
evident. We've discussed that. That's fairly obvious. The food industry, as we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I was thinking of, what about is specific within the monetary industry, the concept of debt?
Oh, yes. That's really individuals that are in debt, for the most part, made poor choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of like a thumb down on them, pushing them down.
But
So
that's a creation of service to self, is it not?
it is. It is, because there is no reason for debt within any society, because there is enough to go around.
Mm-hmm.
It's just those that want to hoard the money, like the man with the orange hair,
Yes.
those that want to hoard the money. They think that having more and more of those green pieces of paper are going to insulate them and keep them safe.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, that's farther from the truth.
Right.
They need more self-examination
Mm-hmm.
and consideration for their family, their friends, and those that they interact with. But they are incapable of doing that because they've been so influenced by service to self for such a long time that they, we don't want to say lost the capability, but have lost the ability to recognize that within themselves.
Mm-hmm. Which again, is a reduction in awareness, or the lack of awareness.
Yes.
Okay. What about religion? How do you see religion affecting the population's capacity to evolve, or do you?
That's an individual choice. We find we can only reference Aaron's religion upbringing as being with the cross,
Right.
Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
very corrupt. Very corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much a service to self orientated industry.
Mm-hmm.
We use the word industry because it generates a tremendous amount of your dollars.
Right.
And they utilize fear within their people that sit in those rows
Right.
to generate more and more of the dollars. And they've manipulated what they call Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. They've manipulated his teachings into that book, the Bible.
Right.
They've manipulated his teachings to serve their own purposes,
Mm-hmm.
which is very,
Self-serving.
it's very self-serving, because his purpose and role when he came to your planet was not to have that trend.
Mm-hmm.
It was to be compassionate,
Mm-hmm.
heal. He was a tremendous healer,
Mm-hmm.
and guide people.
Mm-hmm.
And that all got taken advantage of.
Right.
And that was all service to self, that recognized his ability
Mm-hmm.
to generate a large crowd.
Right.
And they recognized that, and they took advantage of it. And
Right.
that's been ongoing for a millennium plus in your calendar system.
Right.
And it's the same with all religions. Muhammad, his original intent was, he had good intentions, but service to self clearly got to him, and that's because where he was located was a portal for them to come in.
Right.
That was one of the main portals
Right.
for them to come in. And so they kind of we picture him sitting underneath a tree with the little green things, olives, and they got to him.
Yeah.
And so
They were successful in their overtures, but some of his teachings, some of his earlier teachings, were not distorted.
no,
And that was the basis for his following. And then he became, I don't know, weakened. I don't know how you would describe it.
he became influenced.
Influenced, yeah. But separating the spiritual teachers, of which we've had a multitude, their intent, and I'm offering this for your comment, their intent was to be a model for people to observe and emulate, and therefore change their own evolutionary status to evolve. And none of these spiritual teachers were actually creators of the religions that evolved based upon their teachings.
No, their teachings were manipulated to create a religion to generate more money
Right.
and
right.
power
Yeah.
over the people within the populace that were lacking awareness to discern what was real and what was not.
Right.
And they were so desperate to look for a leader of a grandiose origin.
A savior, isn't it? And just as a rule, they look for someone to save them so they don't have to do the work. Is that too simplified?
Yes, we wouldn't say savior. They were just desperate for a leader
Okay.
To guide them.
Right.
And so when these individuals started speaking about spiritual things that were unseen, unheard, it was a relatively new concept. And so to have somebody reinforce that idea that everybody looked up to them, it was almost like sheep being led by a shepherd. And so they pictured their leader as being a shepherd who knew everything. So they just didn't question anything and just followed it because they were desperate for information, ideology, answers to questions. And these individuals seem to demonstrate the ability to service that.
Okay, but that condition is prevalent today. Is it not?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So it without discernment, again, as we've discussed.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think probably we need to let our channel go. She's usually fatigued by this period of time during the course of our conversations. But just my 2 cents worth, I would like to continue with topics like we've discussed to help provide the populace with information that they can become more discerning in their choices and their perceptions of self.
Yes, we would like that too.
Okay. Thank you, my friends.